So, hello students, I'm Dr. Vaishali Bhanande. I'm an MBBS, MD, PhD in anatomy. Today we're going to learn about lecture 2 of the brainstem series, development of brainstem. Last time we studied the parts of brainstem. Let's understand now how did the brainstem develop. So, this lecture is a brief description of development of brainstem. There are a lot of details, okay? But as and when they are relevant to you, I'll give them to you. Today, we will just develop the brainstem. It's an enjoyable lecture. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. Right. So, let's begin by understanding what is neurulation. Right. So, by neurulation, the embryo develops a neural tube and neural crest cells. What is all this? Okay. So, the story goes like this. When an embryo is developing, it's basically a flat two sheets of cells called as the bilaminar embryo. Okay, there's an upper layer and there's a lower layer. The upper layer is called as the epiblast, and it is really this shaped. You, when you were a babe, when you were an embryo, were actually just a pear-shaped structure. You didn't even have a body cavity. Now what happens? At the caudal end of this developing embryo, some cell series develop an elongation. An elongated elevation in the developing embryo in the epiblast is called as the primitive streak. Just imagine that there are cells in this bilaminar embryo which become elevated in the caudal region. Okay? These cells now begin to depress down. This is epiblast. They depress through the epiblast and begin to appear inferiorly. Can you see my finger appearing inferiorly? Okay. So they begin to appear inferiorly, and this cord of cells is called as the notochord. So you have epiblast now, and you have a cord of cells lying below it, right? This cord of cells is called notochord. What does notochord do? Notochord begins to stimulate the overlying epiblast to thicken to form a plate called as the neural plate. Okay, so now I had epiblast, then I had notochord, and now the overlying epiblast portion of it has now become thickened to form the neural plate. So now I'm going to take a section of the developing embryo and take a look. So this is a section of the developing embryo. This here is your notochord. This here I've labeled as ectoderm, same as epiblast. Okay. And here you're seeing neural plate, which is a portion of your epiblast which has thickened to form the neural plate. Now, understanding this is very important for all of you. Notochord below, neural plate above. Now, what happens to the neural plate? Can we say this is your neural plate? This hand is your neural plate. With time, what happens? The neural plate begins to form a little groove. Okay, this neural plate is now forming a groove called as the neural groove. And the two edges of this groove are called neural folds. The theory is appearing on the side, that is for you to read. Okay, I'm not going to read it. It's there for you in the form of notes. So you had a neural plate which formed a neural groove, and the two edges of the groove were called neural folds. If you note, at the edge of these neural folds, there are these few cells which are called as the neural crest cells. Okay. Now what happens? The neural folds begin to get attracted towards each other till they fuse and they form a neural tube. Take a look. This is your neural tube. The two neural folds have fused together, converting the plate into a tube. This is called as the neural tube. You can see the neural crest cells on the side. Right. So this is how from an epiblast, from a neural plate, we have folded the plate to form a neural tube. Now, what have we got at the end of neurulation? At the end of neurulation, I have a neural tube. This neural tube is dilated at the cranial end and slim and narrow, tubular at the caudal end. So this is the neural tube we have at the end of neurulation. Now what happens? Let's understand. So let's understand how a brain stem can be developed from this. This is the cranial dilated part. I want you to focus only on it. Understand that the tubular part is going to develop the spinal cord. We'll not worry about it. That's for some other day. Okay. So this dilated cranial part now forms three dilatations. There was a single dilatation. Now that's going to get converted into three dilatations. The cranial part is called prosencephalon, then mesencephalon, and then the rhombencephalon. Images will help you here. This is the same tube which has now got divided into three dilatations: prosencephalon, mesencephalon, and rhombencephalon. Prosen is also called the forebrain, mesen is also called as the midbrain, and rhomben is also called as the hindbrain. If you recall, I had told you what is hindbrain. So you should be able to correlate and understand what you're going to develop from rhombencephalon. You can go back to the earlier lecture to understand. Right. Now the prosen gives rise to two little ears. You can see them. These are called telencephalic vesicles. Okay. So prosencephalon is now giving rise to two projections called telencephalic vesicles. Right. Now from a single long tube, you are seeing that it has started to bend. Okay. So which means the next part. This neural tube now begins to show flexures. Let's understand the flexures. So your brain is not a tube, right? It is bent on itself. So that's what we are learning now. Here you're seeing the first flexure between the narrow tubular part and the rhombencephalic dilatation. This is called as the cervical flexure between the rhombencephalon and the developing spinal cord. So finally, the spinal cord is long and the rhombencephalon has started to bend. The next flexure you will see is within the mesencephalon. So if this was your rhomben and this was your mesencephalon, it just bends on itself. It just shows a little bend on itself. This is called as the mesencephalic flexure. Okay. Now we come to the third flexure, which is within the rhombencephalon. Here, the rhombencephalon, within the rhombencephalon itself, there is a flexure, dividing your rhombencephalon into a cranial and a caudal part. The cranial part is called metencephalon. The caudal part is called myelencephalon. Pause. Think. How many flexures did you see? You saw three flexures: cervical, mesencephalic, and rhombopontine. Cervical was between spinal cord and rhombencephalon. That was the first bit. Mesencephalic was within the mesencephalon itself. And the pontine flexure is within the rhombencephalon such that the rhombencephalon is now divided into two parts: metencephalon and myelencephalon. Too much? I'll tell you how to remember this. So this is the same tube. Let's understand that this is prosencephalon and these are the telencephalic vesicles. This is mesencephalon and this is rhombencephalon, which now has been divided into metencephalon and myelencephalon. Revise this. Get this fixed in your brain. Your cranial dilated part of the neural tube has now got subdivided into so many small parts: telencephalon, prosencephalon, mesencephalon, rhomben divided into metencephalon, myelencephalon. This is basic. You have to know this. Now what happens? How does brainstem develop from all this? The mesencephalon develops to form the midbrain. In the rhombencephalon, metencephalon develops to form the pons and cerebellum. Myelencephalon develops to form the medulla oblongata. There is your brainstem. Mesen, midbrain. Mitten, pons, cerebellum. Myelin, medulla. Simple. So, revise with me. Mesen, midbrain. Mitten, pons and cerebellum. Myelencephalon, medulla oblongata. Now, there is one little thing you should know more. Each part is carrying its own cavity. So here is a section. This is the diagrammatic image. This is now not how it is in the brain. So now you can see that here is the central canal of spinal cord. Okay. This central canal is now continuing into the rhombencephalon, forming a cavity called fourth ventricle. Now you should anticipate the next part. Fourth ventricle continues upwards into the midbrain as aqueduct of Sylvius. Aqueduct continues into the prosencephalon as third ventricular cavity. Third ventricle continues upwards into telencephalic vesicles as lateral ventricular cavity. All these are continuous with each other. Now, what about the tissue of brain? What about the nervous tissue itself? So remember, this is a tube which is single layered, which is what you're seeing here. A single layer of tall columnar cells is what the neural tube is all about. Then what happens? These cells begin to multiply. And as they multiply, they migrate outwards. As they migrate, they create three zones, from one cell layer to multiple zones. The innermost zone is called ependymal zone, from where the cells are migrating, creating a mantle zone and then creating a marginal zone. So now your nervous tissue is made up of three layers. Okay. So what is ependymal layer? Ependymal layer is the layer of cells that will line the cavity. They will give rise to two types of cells, neuroblasts and spongioblasts. Remember, your neuroblast and spongioblast are going to migrate outwards. So that's the ependymal cells. As they migrate outwards, they enter the mantle zone. In the mantle zone, now you have neuroblasts and spongioblasts. Neuroblasts give rise to neurons. Spongioblasts give rise to supporting cells or neuroglia. So in the layer outside ependymal layer, you will find all the neurons. And then outside that is the marginal layer, which contains only spongioblasts and axons of neurons. So axons, the neurons that are lying here, their axons will be lying in the marginal zone. So now this is how from a single layer, neuroblasts and spongioblasts have migrated outwards and have created the nervous tissue. Remember, neuroblasts give rise to neurons, spongioblasts give rise to supporting cells called neuroglial cells. Right. But while this multiplication is going on, okay, there are zones in the ventral and dorsal region which are not really migrating. There is not much activity happening there. So here and here, the activity is quite limited. And this is called as the floor plate and the roof plate. Okay. So what happens in the floor plate and the roof plate is that there is no migration happening there. The migration is happening more sidewards than ventral and dorsal. Meanwhile, within the ependymal layer, a sulcus develops. Did you see that? This sulcus is called sulcus limitans. This sulcus is called sulcus limitans. This sulcus helps to divide the surrounding mantle zone into ventral basal lamina, dorsal alar lamina. So your mantle zone contains what? It contains neurons. Now these neurons have been grouped together into two groups. A ventral pair of group called basal lamina, a dorsal group called alar lamina. Okay, so take a look. This is your basal lamina, this is your alar lamina. Now what is peculiar about this? Everybody who develops from basal lamina is motor by function. Everybody who develops from alar lamina is sensory by function. Basic fundamental rule. Okay, so sulcus limitans help to divide your mantle zone into ventral and dorsal. Ventral basal, dorsal alar. Everybody who became ventral went on to become motor by functioning. Everybody who became dorsal went on to become sensory by function. These are basic fundamentals. You must know them. Okay. So, we will discuss much more about this later. But let's talk about functional organization of the neurons who have migrated into basal as well as alar lamina. This is going to take some thinking. take a break, drink some water, coffee. Then we will come to this last part of this lecture. So, ready? Functional organization. Now, this is going to be a little difficult. Hear it out the first time, revise it a couple of times. And of course, throughout the lecture series, I will repeat, revise this part with you. Basal lamina. The basal lamina neurons get grouped from medial to lateral into 3 groups. So whatever was ventral gets grouped into 3 groups. Okay. What are the 3 groups? Somatic efferent neurons. These are neurons whose axons will supply all those muscles which take origin from myotones. For example, your hypoglossal nerve. Branchial efferent. These will contain those neurons whose axons will supply muscles that have taken origin from the branchial arches. So those of you who've done this development of head neck region will understand this. And finally, general visceral efferent. The axons of these neurons will go and synapse. They will be preganglionic axons. They will go and synapse with parasympathetic ganglia. Okay, so basically they will be secretomotor to all those various salivary glands or glands present in the head neck region. Take a look at the image to understand. This is the basal lamina region. This is somatic efferent, special visceral efferent or branchial efferent, and general visceral efferent. Okay, so all these are neurons which have developed from which lamina? Developed from basal lamina. Okay, now this huge thing is the cavity of brainstem which is expanded out, which we will discuss some other time because it becomes too much for you. Let's go to now alar lamina. The neurons which took origin from alar lamina get grouped into 4 groups, 4 functional groups. What are the 4 functional groups? General visceral afferent, special visceral afferent, general visceral afferent, special visceral afferent. Remember, they are sensory, so you're going to get information from the body. Those neurons which get information from general viscera will be grouped under GVA. But those who get special information from the viscera will come under special visceral efferent. This includes all those who are getting taste sensation. Okay, for example, your 7th cranial nerve, your 9th cranial nerve, your 10th cranial nerve. They are carrying back taste sensation from your oral cavity. So those nuclei will be called as special visceral afferent. Further 2 more groups are general somatic afferent, special somatic afferent. They are getting information from the soma. Okay, so general information from the soma comes under general somatic afferent. For example, you get some information from your face, from your scalp, external ear. Or then those who are getting special information from the soma. For example, your hearing, your so that's how you're able to balance your body. All this comes under special somatic afferent. So this is the sensory area, therefore the area that is developed from alar lamina. The neurons here can be classified as general visceral afferent, special visceral afferent. Special visceral afferent is also called branchial afferent. This is general somatic afferent and special somatic afferent. So these are all the components of the neurons you will see here. This is basic. The last part of the lecture is little challenging. Do not feel bad that you may not have understood it as well as you would want to. These lectures are available. You must come back to them as you begin to learn about the rest of the brainstem. Now we will discuss much about this individually in medulla and pons as well as midbrain. So let's summarize what we learned in this lecture. We talked about what is neurulation and then the basic steps till the formation of neural tube. Then we brought our focus on the cranial end of the neural tube, caused it to dilate to form 3 basic dilatations, prosen, meson and rhombencephalon. With the help of flexures, we further subdivided it into prosencephalic, telencephalic, mesencephalic, various dilatations. and we discussed about the cavities till we finally decided which part forms which part of brainstem. So we discussed how meson forms midbrain, how metencephalon forms pons and cerebellum, how myelencephalon forms the medulla oblongata. Then we talked about how there is formation of sulcus limitans and division of the neurons into basal lamina and alar lamina. How everything that develops from basal lamina is motor and everything that develops from alar lamina is sensory in nature. Then we had a brief introduction about the cranial nerve components. We will discuss about this a lot more in the coming lectures. Okay, so go back, revise this, solve the questions that I have given you, and then we will begin the next journey, which is about specific parts of brainstem. See you in my next lecture. Bye.